try a kind of a live thing.
We're live again. Hello, everybody. Well, this is our part 2. Well, just want to let you know, we said goodbye in our last live, and Lily and I kept talking, and I realized, whoa, there's so much more we want to talk about. There's a connection between art and social justice, and she was trained in community art, and I was really interested in what is actually community art. And so Amelia said she also wanted to take me through this journey, being a client. So, well, you're in for a treat. So welcome back to the part 2 of the art of health and well-being. Today we're talking to Amelia, the artist and art therapist all the way from Canada. So, well, there you go, Amelia.
Yeah, the conversation was so good. We just kept rolling, and yeah, there's so much more to talk about. But yeah, so community arts is what we ended up kind of continuing our conversation about. So like we talked about before, my training was in my undergrad community arts, and then in graduate school art therapy. I'll say a little bit about the difference between the two. So art therapy is more of a clinical discipline, kind of similar to the training that a social worker or a counselor would have. So, someone who's prepared to work with someone who's facing certain mental health issues, who kind of has the clinical skills to hold that mental health space and offer guidance in that sense. Community arts is a much more kind of grassroots approach that has to do with community organizing, bringing people together, and using art as a tool to kind of facilitate dialogue about different social justice issues.
Wow, and it is so important, especially, but this year we had the International Women's Month. We interviewed so many female leaders around the world, talking about gender equality, also what's happening in all over the world, the anti-Asian, movement, or anti-Asian, I don't know, whatever you call it, is happening. So, we're looking at gender and racial equality and just in general humanity, and how can we, have more space for each other and give respect for each other. So how can we link art with the social justice or the things we want to talk about and express?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of ways. First of all, I want to name kind of my social location. I'm a cis white lady. I'm a queer person, but my kind of dominant social location is one of a lot of privilege. So just acknowledging that, we're having a conversation, and my perspective as, a white lady is being centered right now, kind of feeling aware of that. To kind of move forward into your question, I think there's this idea of moral imagination. And I first heard that expression from the art therapist Rupinder Kaur, who is just an incredible social justice advocate, facilitator, speaker. She does lots of work around cultural humility. She's based in Toronto. And she speaks about this idea of moral imagination, the idea that it's a creative act to imagine different futures for ourselves. So engaging in art practice is, one of the kind of major steps towards creating a different future. Like, how can we imagine a society where more racial equity exists, or money is handled differently, or whatever the issue you want to focus on, to kind of get to a place where things are different from the way they are now, and oppressive systems don't exist the way they exist now. We have to be creative. So especially working with kids, kind of teaching them to use that muscle of creativity, I think can only result in different futures being creative.
Wow, that I am so interested. And when I think from pharmacists, they're very logically trained person, and I feel like there is a certain way to do things and structured way to do things, and I often feel that it hit this glass ceiling, I can't break through. And I feel that you have the answer as an artist and the creativity in the creative world, that there is no boundaries for you, there is no structure. So how can we transition from this structured building to this endless, limitless world?
Yeah, it's a huge question. And I think it's a bit of both, right? With art, we have the capacity to imagine different futures. And, that being said, I consider myself a feminist therapist. I consider myself, someone who's trying to be in the practice of working through an anti-oppressive lens. And that often means like just naming the elephant in the room. Sometimes a client might be experiencing something and kind of internalizing like, oh, I can't do this thing, I can't do that thing. And, perhaps it has something to do with their own life and their own experience, but also perhaps it's because they're living under patriarchy and capitalism, and we can name that. So not kind of taking responsibility for, the powers and the structures that are affecting us and the systems that make it hard for us to thrive. So, art gives us this ability to imagine different futures. And I think, in my way of working, we're looking at all the systems, not just what a person can take personal responsibility for in their own lives.
Wow. So if you can put it into like a more practical level, I feel like
that was very theoretical, very out there.
Very a big concept. So how can we bring down to a practical level? What can we do in our everyday life still to express ourselves? So, I'm just really interested in that community art you were talking about, and you said bring people from the community together and using art therapy to gel and to really bring everybody together. And I think that's beautiful. And that we're talking about inclusivity, diversity, how include everybody. So how can we do that, on a daily basis? And also it's a healing process. I'm just any practical ways?
Also practical ways to kind of come into community. Like, well, let's talk about how you and I met. Like, we met on Clubhouse. Like, coming into spaces where there's active dialogues about art, community, creativity. Like, I would call that community arts. Like, there's so many platforms now, and a topic of our conversation in part one was really about the digital world and how we can kind of bring creativity into that space. I think we have this really golden opportunity to be in connection and community with each other when kind of the boundaries of like, okay, I can access people within my community. Now, go onto Instagram and look at hashtag, art therapy and kind of join a community that way. That's, one kind of way to approach it. But I think also, finding ways to make art with other people is a really wonderful therapeutic thing. Tough right now, but one of my favorite things in the world is just to be in a space with other people making stuff. And maybe there's a project they're all collaborating on. Like, I love doing mural projects with people, or maybe it's just like a Wednesday night sewing group. Like that in itself is also therapeutic.
Wow, it's very interesting. And that reminds me of I'm sure that exists in America or in Canada as well, like this art studio that you can go in and paint and drink champagne and create and paint together.
Yeah, paint nights.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I'm always really interested in this space. But then I guess you're given a painting for you to draw there. But I guess you can also use the space to paint whatever that you feel like, and that's you coming together with other people. That's also community art. So I think, well, again, like I think it's the inspiration. What you've said, these conversations on Clubhouse and this social media or things we've seen on Instagram really inspire us to think outside the box, inspire us to do something different. I think, the reason why I created the Unicorn Fart media is for us to do something different. And unicorn farts, rainbows and glitters and, something beautiful. But fart itself is something people never really talk about. But why not? And it's part of us, part of a human being. And, as health professionals, we talk about poo all the time, talk about your urine all the time, the color, the smell, then that's so natural to us. But I'm talking about right now on social media, that's something people don't really talk about in a conversation.
And you're doing something that's kind of very integral to art therapy, is taking the metaphor of something. And, unicorn fart, has all this personal kind of meaning for you. It's got this metaphor, and it represents something so much bigger. And, from there, there's all this kind of personal meaning, all this professional meaning. And that's kind of what we do in art therapy is, maybe someone makes a piece of art about something. We start to look at the symbols and the metaphors they're using. And then how is that relevant to my life or my business or my healing goals?
Wow, very interesting. So how would you like to take me through this we really talk about this metaphor So how can you take a client through this, or you said you can take a client through without even having any materials or paintings or any art?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'll do with you right now is something I'll often do with clients to check in. And just disclaimer, we're not doing therapy right now. We're going to keep this kind of surface. So I'm going to encourage you to choose something that doesn't hit a nerve and that feels safe to kind of share on LinkedIn and Facebook. But something I'll often do is have someone just kind of scan around their space and look around their room and find an object that feels like a good metaphor for how you're feeling right now. And I'll find one too. And look, like you found something really fast. Right? Like you're demonstrating something really interesting, right? Like, was there this sense of like, that's the thing?
Yeah. It's about this unicorn. I saw it in the $2 shop. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, whoa, I'm getting it. It's just, I don't know, it's something fun. I think the playfulness, and we'll talk about in our part 1, that's something I look for in life. Is I feel like we're so limited, and we can't do a lot of things, but we can still play. We can still let our inner child out and to enjoy ourselves. And then the color, I've realized, for a long time I wear black only. Well, I'm still wearing black, but now I've realized, hey, why not choose pink? Why not, wear, I bought this yesterday, this big earrings. I love your big earrings on your Instagram post, and I think why not just bring that color out. So, and I really like this unicorn.
And yeah, isn't it amazing? You found something. There was the sense of like, oh, that's the thing I'm feeling like right now. That's the metaphor. And from there, all this reflection about how you love to bring color into your life, like the kinds of conversations you're trying to have, how you're trying to show up in the world, right? Like from kind of the seed of a symbol, a unicorn, or whatever it is, something that comes up in your art, something that's in your space. So much possibility comes out to reflect on, where you're at in your life right now.
Yeah, which is wow. Okay, it's very interesting how even object. So for everyone, if you're watching, so have a look around your room and pick item. I think that I really believe in everything happened for a reason. Also, how I walked into this software happened for a reason.
Yeah, there was some resonance therapy. Like there was this listening or this inner felt sense of like, that feels like an important symbol to surround myself with.
Wow. Well, thank you, Amelia. This is very, very interesting. And how just want to like 1 second come back to the social justice. So what's the best way from your point of view for us to express? And I know that people choose different way to express, and people show the anger or physically or verbally, but what's the best way for us creatively to express how we feel but not hurt anyone?
Yeah, so how we feel like in terms of kind of negative emotions that are coming up.
Or negative emotion. I really believe in expressing negative emotion is a way of healing, is the way, because we are hurt. That's why we express. We have to let it out. But how can we let it out in a safe way, but also supportive? Holding space for others, respect for others, as well as for individual to release that negative emotion.
Right. You're hitting on something really important, is that, different kinds of practices, like an art practice, can be really healthy outlets for challenging emotions. So, say you're on, month 13 of being locked up in the pandemic, and that's bringing up anger and frustration or, whatever emotions for you. Perhaps having, a daily art practice or a daily writing practice, whatever feels good for you, could be a way of having a channel or a place to put those feelings. Something I come back to over and over again is a quote. I think there's a misconception sometimes that just making a big mess, making kind of big art is therapeutic in itself. Sometimes the quote that I come back to is, catharsis without context isn't therapeutic. So yes, it can feel really good to kind of get something out or make a huge splatter painting. And we also want to have the containment. So if you're going to go and make kind of big, expressive, angry art, make sure you're pairing it with something where you're kind of bringing your energy back or bringing your power back or doing something that feels resourcing and grounding and mindful. So if you're kind of feeling a big emotion and you want to just like pound clay for 20 minutes straight, awesome. Get your feelings out that way and then ground it in some maybe guided breath drawings where you kind of draw a figure 8 for 10 minutes, or you do some reflective writing for a while afterwards. So pairing kind of the big output with something grounding, resourcing, regulating.
Wow, it's so interesting because we often do well in the first part. It feels so amazing to let it out, to scream, to punch, and to let it out. But it's the second part when you said bring the power back, grounding. That's something we don't tend to do.
Well, art can be very activating, right? Like it's amazing the emotions that can come up when someone starts to get into a big process, especially if they're working with, you know, kind of fluid materials. Like paint is really evocative. So if someone's having a big process, amazing. We want to make sure we ground it. And this is why, you know, I think it's really important if you're seeking to do kind of a therapeutic process, you're doing it with a professional who has the skills and has the training to hold things like trauma or different kinds of mental health diagnosis to make sure it's safe for you.
Wow, thank you. And I felt that the taboo, talking about the taboo itself is breaking that boundary, is feeling okay. You know, I usually said speaking the elephant in the room is feeling okay, feel safe that you can talk about this openly, can address that. And a lot of time when we suppress how we feel, not addressing this elephant, but still feel these negative emotions and not let it out, that's when it does the damage to us. So it is, you know, for everyone watching, if you feel that something is suppressed and you negative emotions, or you feel that you can't let it out, you go to a safe space, maybe draw, paint, or bring an object, or or follow Amelia and go through her art therapy class. So it is important to let it out, let your negative emotion out. And
there's so many ways to do that.
Yeah. So and I love that it's all part of healing. And again, you know, I'm so excited to see this whole, you know, art and science and health and healing. It's all just one thing. You know, we're a whole person, a whole health. And you know, so thank you so much for sharing us with this part, using the creativity to heal ourselves and to become happier and fun and bring that joy back to our life. And like, it's so important, especially around this time of the year. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Well, thank everybody for joining our part 2. And I think I feel complete. How are you feeling, Amelia? You feel complete?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling excited. I mean, this is my favorite thing in the world to talk about, like the personal side of art therapy and kind of meeting your own mental health goals. Amazing. And when we can take that out into a greater societal context and start to shape the things that don't work in our cultures and our societies, like that's the extension piece of art therapy that I'm really passionate about. So thank you for the platform.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. So we're looking forward to more discussions and conversations from this channel. So the art of health and well-being. Looking forward to see you again. Bye.
Bye.